We have 47 members here today that are going to ask questions, so we're going to abide by the 5 minutes. I will begin, followed by Ranking Member Raskins. This week, the Oversight Committee issued another bank subpoena targeting specific wires originating from Beijing. Most of our bank subpoenas have been for Biden family associates' accounts, resulting in thousands of pages of bank records. We've identified these bank accounts based on suspicious activity reports filed with the Treasury Department after being flagged by the banks. The bank records obtained this week showed that on August 2nd, 2019, Jonathan Lee and Ms. Tang Ling in Beijing sent Hunter Biden $250,000, listing Joe Biden's home address in Wilmington, Delaware. The wire stated it was for a personal investment. A second wire showed that on July 26, 2019, Ms. Wang Xin sent $10,000 listing Joe Biden's home address in Wilmington, Delaware. The $10,000 wire said it was a loan to beneficiary. Now let's talk about the $250,000 personal investment. Sure looks like Jonathan Lee was making a substantial investment in the Bidens months after Joe Biden announced his run for the presidency in April 2019. Now, who is Jonathan Lee? During Devin Archer's interview with the Oversight Committee, he explained how Vice President Biden developed a relationship with Jonathan Lee. Vice President Biden had coffee with Jonathan Lee in Beijing. He talked with him on the phone and even wrote a college recommendation letter for Mr. Lee's children. Hunter Biden even met with Jonathan Lee after flying on Air Force Two to Beijing with Joe Biden. The Beijing Bidens cultivated a relationship with Jonathan Lee and other Chinese nationals for one reason and one reason only: to access their wealth. As we all know, the Bidens had nothing to sell except the brand, which was Joe Biden. Hunter Biden sold the brand well, making the Biden family millions from China and elsewhere. While Joe Biden was vice president, Hunter Biden became an investor in a Chinese investment fund with Jonathan Lee and owned a percentage of BHR Partners through one of his many LLCs. This was a political problem for his dad, the big guy, who was running for president. In October 2019, 2 months after the Beijing wires, Hunter Biden's lawyer claimed he served only as a member of the board of directors in an unpaid position. This was Hunter Biden's lawyer. He was in an unpaid position. Abby Lowell now claims the money is a documented loan from a private individual. Now, these wire statements are very concerning, and the Biden's defenders' justification for the money isn't consistent with what we know from the suspicious activity reports from Treasury. Mr. Dubinsky, I'm very skeptical of Abby Lowell's statement that the $250,000 payment from Jonathan Lee and another woman was a loan, because the wire states it was a personal investment. We've also reviewed documents at Treasury that don't support Mr. Lowell's theory. In your experience, are international loans of this amount supported by documentation such as loan terms, interest rates, and repayment schedule?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. They typically would be. You would see that. You would see documents setting forth the interest rates, terms of repayments,
absolutely,
all of those.
Absolutely. So would it be important to review Hunter Biden's bank records and see if Hunter Biden paid back the money to Jonathan Lee, or if he sent the money to someone else, I don't know, using a cashier's check, for example?
Well, as somebody mentioned earlier, it's very important to follow the money.
Absolutely.
And that's very important in this situation.
Thank you. Professor Turley, we all know what this payment's really for. It's for influence peddling and selling the Biden brand. Now, to date, we have shown that the Biden family and their companies received more than $15 million without providing any known legitimate services between 2014 and 2019. If you include the business associates in their companies, they've received over $24 million. Based on evidence we've developed so far, what are some of the potential laws we should be analyzing during our impeachment inquiry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually lay out what are the most obvious potential articles of impeachment without saying that those have been established, but the ones that I recommend for the committee to focus on. And one of the things I recommend is that the committee actually start by looking at potential crimes, because I've said that in the past two impeachments, that it's an important thing to front-load criminal acts for the reasons I laid out. It gives a very high standard for impeachment, quite frankly, higher than it's binding. I said in the last two impeachments, you can't impeach for non-criminal conduct. So I suggest starting there. But as I talk about in my testimony, bribery, obstruction, conspiracy, abuse of power, Those have all been raised in past impeachments. Abuse of power is the article that is very, very common. It tends to be a catch-all, and it is the one that I've always been a little bit uncomfortable with, which is why I suggest you end there rather than start there, because that's the article that brings in a lot of non-criminal conduct, and frankly, I think that you need to focus as much as you can on the evidence and whether you can establish these connections.
Very good. Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Raskins of Maryland for 5 minutes.